Ezra Haynes didn't consider himself unlucky, but standing in the middle of docking bay 47 while 3 Varathi warriors stared at him like he was the last cinnamon roll at a carb-starved wedding buffet, he began to reassess his worldview. One minute he was walking out of a maintenance supply kiosk with a freshly printed gasket and a lukewarm cup of synth cough, and the next, an alien woman with eyes like storm clouds and ears that would have given an elf a self-esteem crisis turned to her companions and declared with absolute confidence, "That's my husband." The moment froze. Not metaphorically. The entire dock's AI security paused its background hum. Mid-system update. A luggage droid word to a stop. Somewhere nearby, a gull-like xenobird squawked in confusion and flew into a wall. Ezra blinked. The alien woman smiled at him. Her companions nodded sagely, which was extra unsettling, since one of them had 3 necks and performed a synchronized nodding routine like a slightly drunk chorus line. Ezra opened his mouth, closed it again, took a sip of synth cough, then immediately wished he hadn't. The stuff tasted like disappointment and carbon. "Sorry," he said. "I think there's been a, translation malfunction?" "No malfunction," she said, her voice smooth and deliberate, with a slight accent that tickled his ears in ways that were probably illegal in at least 2 systems. "You are Ezra Haynes. You repaired a Class 7 gravity pump in Sector H, you wear your socks inside out, and you once tried to cook eggs in 0G. Poorly." Ezra shifted. "Okay. Fair. But those eggs had it coming." Her smile widened. He considered running, but she didn't look like someone who'd chase him. She looked like someone who'd already arranged for a net, a tranquilizer dart, and possibly a parade. Her outfit shimmered faintly, clearly some kind of energy weave, and her long ears twitched once, like antennae zeroing in on a frequency only she could hear. "Right," he said. "So, husband." "Yes. And this is because?" "Political necessity. Possibly fate." "Well, that's terrifying." One of her companions, bulky, with what looked like retractable tusks and a hollow badge that read JLTH, certified ornithologist, stepped forward and handed him a scroll. An actual scroll, made of some weird metallic fiber that pulsed like it had its own Wi-Fi. Ezra took it gingerly. "What is this?" "Marriage confirmation pre-form," Gilth grunted. "Subsection 22B of the Interstellar Conjugal Agreements Treaty. Sign and return within 72 hours or face administrative penalties and/or spousal forfeiture." Ezra gawked at him. "Spousal forfeiture?" Gilth shrugged. "It's symbolic. Mostly. There's a pamphlet." "I don't want a pamphlet," Ezra said. "You will," said the other companion, a slender, jellyfish-like being whose voice arrived half a second before its mouth moved. "It contains helpful diagrams." Liravel, as she would later introduce herself, placed a hand on Ezra's arm. "Don't worry, it's temporary, unless we decide otherwise." Ezra knew a trap when he was walking backward into one. He cleared his throat. "Okay, I'm gonna need like a sit down, a cup of actual coffee, and someone to explain, preferably with charts, why a complete stranger just claimed me as her legally recognized snuggle unit." Liravel laughed. It was the kind of laugh that made you question whether your pants were on backward. "Let me take you to lunch," she said. 10 minutes later, he was sitting in a floating booth at the Jelly Leg, a bar that specialized in fermented root beverages and philosophical insults. Their waiter was a 4-armed synth with a broken sarcasm filter. The menu flickered in midair and offered selections like sizzling spacitatoes and neural glazed icefish. Ezra picked something he couldn't pronounce and hoped it didn't involve eyeballs. "So," he said, eyeing her warily, "explain this husband thing." Slowly, with small words. Liravel sipped something green and fizzy. "I needed to avoid a formal betrothal announcement back on Virith. My family has expectations. You happen to be standing nearby. That's not how marriages work. In Varathi culture, claiming someone publicly is a binding contract unless both parties deny it within a specific window, which is roughly 6 hours. Ezra checked his wristband. "You said it 12 minutes ago." "I did. And you didn't think to warn me before declaring me your intergalactic cuddle muffin?" I thought surprise might work in my favor. The food arrived. Ezra stared at his plate. It looked like a jelly-covered accordion was having an existential crisis. You're lucky I'm not the kind of guy to panic and flail his way out an airlock. You're lucky I picked you instead of Gilth. His last husband still sends him apology cakes. Gilth raised a hand from the next booth. Still love you, sweetie. Liravel ignored him. Ezra stabbed at his food and tried not to think about whether it was stabbing back. So what now? He asked. Do I wear a badge? Get a tattoo? Attend courtship seminars? For the next 6 hours, we pretend to be married. After that, you deny the claim and we part ways. That's it. Unless you'd like to make it real. Ezra coughed and knocked over his glass. Is this flirting? Because I think I missed several steps between hello and honeymoon. I'm improvising, she said with a grin. Besides, it's not the worst idea, is it? We'd make a good team. I'm a part-time mechanic with social anxiety and a tendency to talk to my tools. I'm a Varathi exile with 5 names, 2 enemies, and a ship that smells like roasted algae. Well, when you put it like that. They ate in companionable silence for a while, broken only when the booth tried to recline without warning, nearly launching Ezra into his bowl. By the time they left the restaurant, Ezra was no closer to understanding why she'd chosen him, but he'd at least stopped looking for the nearest escape pod. The station's public corridors were unusually quiet, save for the occasional whisper of pressure seals and distant advertisements yelling about mucus treatments. Liravel walked beside him, her expression unreadable. You weren't just making it up, he said finally. Someone's after you. She nodded. And this fake marriage thing, it really helps? It gives me protection. A Varathi noble with a spouse can't be legally detained under the current accord. It's archaic, but effective. And the part where I get turned into political bait? You get diplomatic immunity, a stipend, and access to our holiday estate on Moon 7. That sounds made up. It is, but I'm a very good liar. They reached the docking lift. It smelled faintly of ozone and regret. He looked at her, really looked, the way her ears twitched when she was nervous. The small scar near her jaw, like a memory she refused to erase. He sighed. Okay, he said. You've got 4 hours and change. Convince me this isn't the worst mistake I've ever made. She smiled. Challenge accepted. The lift doors hissed closed. Behind them, unnoticed, a maintenance drone shifted its lens and transmitted a burst of data across a silent channel. Far away, something ancient and patient stirred in response. Ezra woke up to find an octopus in his closet. Not a real one, a holographic security AI shaped like an octopus, wearing what appeared to be a bowler hat and monocle. Good morning, Mr. Haynes, it said with the crisp accent of someone who definitely believed in space taxes. This suite has been retrofitted with Varathi diplomatic grade privacy protocols. Please avoid any casual mention of insurgencies, weaponized bacteria, or your fondness for cheese. We're being recorded. I don't even like cheese, Ezra mumbled, rubbing his eyes. And who programs a hologram octopus to wear a hat? I am modeled after Varathi legend, the octopus said. Lord Binkleton of the Deep. You people need hobbies. Ezra rolled out of bed and immediately tripped over a parcel the size of a small coffin. It blinked at him. New attire, Liravel's voice called from the adjoining room. Protocol dictates matching garments for all spousal units. Also, the station's registrar AI won't stop asking me for honeymoon photos. He groaned, cracked the seal on the parcel, and pulled out a shimmering jacket that felt like wearing half a nebula and possibly a small bird. This fabric's humming. It's adaptive silk. It responds to mood and threat levels. Great, Ezra muttered. Now I can literally wear my anxiety. By the time he entered the lounge, the suite had transformed into something between a museum exhibit and a theme park for mildly paranoid dignitaries. Liravel stood near the window, her long ears twitching slightly as she scrolled through a floating display of charts, reports, and a very unsettling diagram titled Spouse Liability Grid. She looked up. You slept 4 hours, she said. I dreamed I was being chased by a blender in a tuxedo. Standard Varathi dream projection. It means your subconscious is adjusting to noble exposure. Do I get hazard pay for this? Eventually, she said and smiled. We need to visit the Office of Marital Certification. I assume that's near the Office of Crushing Existential Dread. Just past it. The walk through Anzara 9's diplomatic sector was like moving through the inside of an alien's daydream. Holograms bloomed in the air, advertising everything from zero-G yoga to multidimensional dating events. Ezra swore one of the ads tried to flirt with him. They passed a line of diplomats from 50 systems, one of whom was literally on fire, but claimed it was just a fashion statement. At the entrance to the Office of Marital Certification stood a bored-looking insectoid being named Frull. Frull had 17 limbs and a name tag that read, "Do not attempt small talk." Yes, I have heard that joke before. He waved them through with a gesture that suggested decades of bureaucratic suffering. Inside, they were handed digital forms, retinal scans, a stress ball that doubled as a lie detector, and 2 cups of something fizzy that turned Ezra's tongue green. Please confirm your mutual affection via eye contact and synchronized breathing, the registrar droned. Its face was a blank screen with the word loveliness flashing repeatedly in Comic Sans. Ezra glanced at Liravel. She looked at him with mock seriousness. He huffed out a breath. Synchronized breathing? He whispered. Are we dating or starting a cult? She leaned closer. Breathe with me, oh beloved. Oh stars, he said, but matched her rhythm. The AI beeped. Affection confirmed. You may now proceed to joint asset registration and cross-species medical screening. I want a raise, Ezra muttered. You're technically a prince consort now. You don't get paid. You owe me so many cookies. By the time they escaped the building, Ezra was fluent in 3 new legal dialects and possibly married to a toaster in Sector V. He slumped onto a bench next to a humming vending unit and thumped his head back. I need to understand why this is worth it. Liravel didn't answer right away. She sat beside him, her gaze following a passing courier drone shaped like a rubber duck. My family's power is tied to Viratha's traditions, she said quietly. Our enemies exploit that. If I were unclaimed, they'd have cause to challenge my independence. By claiming a consort, especially a human, I buy time. Why a human? She tilted her head. Because humans are unpredictable. You don't follow the patterns. You improvise, break rules, survive where logic says you shouldn't. My people fear that. Charming, Ezra said. We're galactic raccoons. Clever raccoons. He watched her, thinking. There's something else, isn't there? She hesitated, then nodded. I saw you. In your dreams. In the lattice. He frowned. What lattice? The Varathi lattice. Premonitory field. Complicated. Rare. Dangerous. I connected with it after an attack. I saw you. Not a face, not a name. Just you. And I felt safe. Okay, Ezra said. That's romantic and terrifying. You were repairing a hull breach. You wore mismatched boots. You said something about soup being evil. Soup is evil, he muttered. She smiled faintly. I took it as a sign. Before Ezra could reply, a loud crackling burst from his wrist communicator. Static. Then a voice, mechanical and layered, echoed through. Located. Target confirmed. They both froze. Is that coming from? Liravel pulled out a tiny sphere from her sleeve. It lit up, scanned the area, and pulsed red. It's a track ping. Someone triangulated our location. Ezra stood fast. You've got enemies with a tracking network? I have enemies with governments, she said, already moving. Run. They sprinted through the plaza as signs and kiosks blurred around them. A hover cart of simulated hot dogs exploded behind them in a burst of mustard-scented flame. Ezra yelped. I hate this honeymoon. Try not to die before dessert. They ducked into a side corridor, only to find themselves in a spa offering quantum exfoliation and personality alignment. A robotic receptionist greeted them with a wide, terrifying grin. Welcome. Would you like to remove your regrets? We're good, thanks, Ezra shouted, yanking Liravel behind a wall panel that led into maintenance tunnels. The tunnels were narrow and buzzing with stray static. Ezra kicked a loose pipe, nearly lost a boot to a suction valve, and cursed the architect of this station with increasing creativity. Liravel finally stopped at a locked hatch, tapped in a code, and pulled him through into what looked like a forgotten transit junction. Dust hung in the air, but the space was lit, functional, and quiet. "What is this place?" he asked. "Old network hub, abandoned after the last software purge. It's off the grid." He paced. "They're tracking us." "How?" "I don't know. I wiped all my beacons. Burned the ones embedded." Ezra glanced at her. "Embedded? As in inside you?" She nodded. "Family policy. Royal children are tagged at birth." "That's not a policy. That's a paranoid dystopia." "Yes." He sat down hard. "So now we hide here? Forever?" "No," she said. "We fight back." He looked up. "With what? You got an army in your jacket." "No, but I have a name, and a human who filed the wrong paperwork and became my husband." "Great," Ezra said. "Love and clerical errors." She sat beside him. "You want out." He thought about it. The chase, the explosion, the weird look in her eyes when she talked about the lattice, the way her hand had found his without thinking twice now. He sighed. "Give me something to throw at them next time." She handed him a plasma wrench. "I love this marriage," he said. The disguise was ridiculous, even by Ezra's low standards, which included once pretending to be a janitor during a pirate standoff by holding a mop upside down and humming the Terran national anthem off-key. Now, however, he was dressed in what the Undercity market called a celestial fruit farmer's robe, complete with artificial pollen, self-heating socks, and a scent emitter that made him smell like spiced pears. "You smell edible," Liravel said as they crouched behind a cargo tower in a forgotten sector of Inzara 9's transit ring. Her own disguise wasn't much better. Some kind of moss-draped gown with magnetic bugs that glittered like disco ball dandruff. Ezra scowled. "Is this really what resistance looks like?" She nodded. "According to our contact, it improves blending chances among station-based cults and free-market economists. Both groups wear fruit." The plan, such as it was, involved infiltrating the central relay tower of the station's comms array, hijacking a bureaucratic subroutine, and exposing the attempted Varathi coup through a file dump hidden inside a children's educational broadcast about planetary hygiene. The idea had come from a former intelligence operative named Huzel who now ran a grilled sandwich cart and claimed to have once blackmailed an AI into writing love poems for a senator's cat. Ezra peeked around the corner and sighed. 5 guards. 2 with pulse rifles. 1 with a tactical eyebrow. Tactical eyebrow? Trust me, it's judging me harder than my high school biology teacher. Liravel pressed a small device to her temple. "I can disarm the security field. You take the frontal servers. Get the lattice key from the system vault." Ezra held up a hand. "Let's pause. I'm still a guy who fixes plumbing, remember? I'm not a spy." She took his hand. "You're the guy who stood beside me through Varathi legal traps, exploding vending carts, a spa assassination attempt, and one very awkward couples therapy module. You're not just plumbing anymore." He swallowed. "Okay. But if I die dressed like a fruit vendor, I'm haunting your spice cabinet." The entry was chaotic, mostly because the station's security AI began reciting romantic haikus mid-infiltration, which turned out to be a failsafe installed by someone with a poetry fetish. While Liravel slipped through the field with a series of graceful dodges, Ezra tripped over his own robe and face-planted directly onto a guard's boot. Fortunately, he had learned that the universal constant in the galaxy was overconfidence, and one swift kick to the shin still worked, even in space. Alarms howled. The relay tower's control hub lit up like a rave inside a calculator. Liravel dove for the data core, hands moving with practice speed. "I need 60 seconds. "I don't have 60 seconds," Ezra shouted, ducking behind a server as 3 energy bolts scorched the wall where his face had been. "Then distract them." Ezra stood up and yelled the first thing that came to mind. "I'm legally married to a royal Varathi and entitled to 15% of her ancestral land holdings, and exactly one ceremonial giraffe. The guards paused. "You're the human?" one said, squinting. Ezra spread his arms. "In the flesh, slightly bruised, possibly concussed." One of the guards lowered her weapon. "Did you really challenge Gilth to a custard duel?" "Not on purpose." They blinked, then, inexplicably, started applauding. What is happening?" Ezra hissed toward Liravel. "Varathi gossip networks," she called back. "You're trending." The file dump completed. Liravel slammed her palm onto the panel, activating the broadcast override. In every residential, diplomatic, and leisure sector of Nzara 9, screens flickered. The hygiene program began, as scheduled, with a singing tooth named Plaque-Eating Pete. Halfway through his musical number, a window opened, displaying files, transmissions, and hard evidence of a coordinated attempt to remove Liravel's family from power using backdoor legal amendments and bribe chains stretching across 5-star systems. Nzara 9's Central Arbitration Council responded in real time. Arrest orders were issued. Delegates were summoned. A very angry jellyfish ambassador fainted mid-denial. And on one private channel, a notification pinged Liravel's wrist pad. Exoneration file accepted. All warrants voided. Ezra, panting and crouched beside her, blinked. "That's it." She looked up. "That's it. No explosions? No double crosses." A ceiling panel fell off nearby, revealing a very startled maintenance robot. Well, almost no explosions. Later that night, they sat beneath the glow of the station's simulated moonlight on the viewing deck, sipping something vaguely resembling hot chocolate. Ezra had ditched the robe but not the socks, which were now humming the Varathi anthem softly, having imprinted on him emotionally. "So," he said, "what happens now?" Liravel tilted her head. "I return to Virith. They'll expect a statement, a royal declaration, possibly a dance. Not the interpretive one again?" "Sadly, yes." He smiled faintly. "You're free now. No more hiding. No more fake husband." She looked at him for a long moment. "Was it ever fake?" He hesitated. "I thought it was. Then it wasn't. Then it was again when we got attacked by that opera singer with knives for teeth. That was a misunderstanding. She sang Ave Maria while trying to decapitate me. She had artistic differences. They were quiet. The station's AI played soft ambient jazz in the background, occasionally interrupted by the voice of Plaque-Eating Pete, reminding residents to floss. Ezra looked at her, really looked, past the titles and the chaos and the way her ears twitched when she was thinking too hard. "You saw me in a dream, Lattice," he said. "But I didn't see you until that moment on the dock. I saw you before you ever looked my way." He took her hand. "So what now? Do I stay the random human in a Varathi marriage scandal? Do I become what? A prince? A court jester? Your glorified snack holder?" She leaned closer. "You're not random, Ezra. You're mine." He laughed. "Wow, we've come full circle. Except this time," she said, smiling. "You get to say it back." He kissed her hand. "That's my wife." Somewhere above, a passing satellite captured the moment and filed it under galactic news. Unlikely love stories. The algorithm rated it statistically implausible, yet adorable. In the following weeks, Ezra joined Liravel on Virith. He stood beside her during the ceremonial hearing, which involved a 10-minute bow and a recital of his favorite soup recipe, which the court approved unanimously. They declared the marriage both valid and a compelling narrative of interspecies cooperation, which became mandatory viewing for diplomatic trainees. Ezra took up work with the Varathi Technical Guild, introducing several Terran inventions, including the screwdriver and the passive-aggressive sticky note. He also hosted a surprisingly popular cooking show broadcast to 7 planets, titled Not All Soups Are Evil, co-starring Gilth, who insisted on wearing a different hat in each episode. Liravel reclaimed her standing, but she kept her ship. They traveled often, sometimes for missions, sometimes for mischief, always together. And every time someone asked how they met, Ezra would smile and say, "She looked at me, turned to her friends and said, 'That's my husband.'" And every time Liravel would smile too, because it wasn't fate. Not entirely. It was a choice, one she made with open eyes and long ears.